Welcome back to the LD Aviation Podcast, where we talk all things business aviation and the glamorous, the gritty, and the did that really just happen on a Tuesday at 2 a.m.? Today's guest is someone who digs into the human side of safety because, really, let's face it, airplanes don't make bad decisions, people do. I'm joined today by Dr. Jason Starke, an organizational behaviorist who helps aviation companies understand how culture, leadership, and decision-making drive safety outcomes. Jason works with Baldwin Aviation, which is part of the Portside family, which is a group that's all about taking safety management from a binder on the shelf to a living, breathing part of everyday aviation ops, which we all know how important that is. So we're going to talk about how human behavior affects safety, how leaders can make or break culture, and yes, how not to lose your cool when you're 3 cups of coffee deep and the flight schedule just changed again. So buckle up because this conversation might just shift the way you think about safety from the inside out. So welcome, Jason. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thanks, Lindsay. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. You have such a great background, immense amount of experience, but I kind of want to start out with here, if you could share with our listeners what led you into organizational behavior within aviation.
Well, that's a great question. So in my past, my aviation career has been all in Part 135. So I've been a Part 135 pilot, air medical and charter, director of safety in Part 135. And I always thought that Part 135 organizations, I used to call them petri dishes because you could basically experiment anything there because it's such an interesting and diverse culture in 135 operations versus 91 operations. And so as I started taking on the safety role, I started seeing that it's less about written procedures and systems, but more about people's actions and interactions. And specifically, when I looked at the impact of leadership on how the organization behaves, that really drew me into wanting to study that further. And that is part of my dissertation, was that leadership's impact on safety citizenship. So I think that's what really drove me to really dig into the behavior of an organization.
All right. Interesting. So what kind of came first? Did the aviation come first or organizational behavior?
Oh, aviation. Yeah,
Aviation
absolutely.
was the first one. Okay.
Yeah, I was a pilot long before.
Started the pilot. Okay, sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from your experience then, in all of those flight departments and stuff that you were working on, what is the biggest misconception about safety in aviation organizations?
Oh, that's fine. Well, so that misconception seems to have evolved over the last decade or so. But one of the biggest misconceptions that I think is no longer much of a misconception, although it still exists to some extent, is we haven't had an accident, so we're safe. That is probably the biggest misconception, and that has been for the last few decades.
Sure.
I think as we start evolving in that safety thinking, we start getting misconceptions that relate to like role responsibility. One of them that I see out there is that in safety management, everything safety management related belongs to the safety manager or director of safety, which is not true. It is not true. Safety managers are there to facilitate. It is the functional experts that make it work. So whether you're pilot, dispatcher, scheduler, it is their input and their knowledge that help make the system safer.
Okay. That's really interesting. You're right. Because, a lot of people are just shoving the work over to that safety manager and expecting them to handle everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why would you think, let's talk a little bit more about why is organizational behavior kind of at the core of that safety performance?
As I kind of alluded to earlier, there's, I think it always points back to the human, because if you think about it, that without humans, there'd be no need for safety management. There's absolutely no need for it whatsoever. I mean, no humans. It's the human interaction with the technical and the technical and the procedures and whatnot that make it very interesting. So that's why they call it a socio-technical system. And without that socio part, there would be no need for the safety management system. So why I say it's the core, I go back to this old equation that I remember in the safety management manual for ISBEO, but it was safety performance is equal to safety culture plus SMS. So when we're talking about organizational behavior, we're also really talking strongly about culture, because culture being shared values and beliefs, right? And so how the organization is going to behave as a result of those shared values and beliefs. And then so safety culture plus safety management system equals safety performance, safety culture being the shared values of the people, and safety management, again, going back to the fact that it's safety management. Yes, it is a collection of processes, procedures, and policies to tell you how to do safety management, if you will. But again, without the human and the human wanting to participate and engage in the safety management system, then it's kind of pointless. So another aspect of human behavior or organizational behavior is leadership engaging people into these safety management efforts. So I think it always points back to, that's why I think the behavior, the human, is the core of it. I want to address that when a company puts in their values, safety is a value, that's fine, but a lot of times we don't see that lived out.
Yes.
And for those organizations where safety truly is ingrained in their culture, they don't need to necessarily state that as a value. It's just taken, it's given.
Okay.
It'd be like going to a certain society or a certain culture, like in another country, that they would have to advertise their value of deference to seniors, or respect to seniors. I mean, it just is. I mean, there's no reason to advertise that. So what I see, I mean, as far as a cultural aspect, is that shared value that we're safe because that's just who we are. I mean, we don't think about it. We don't put it on the wall and say, this is what we aspire to. It's just, this is what we are. And so, and we see a lot of that in something called safety citizenship. And again, that goes back to leaders cultivating safety citizens. Safety citizens are those in the organization that understand that any of their actions, even above and beyond what's required of them, does improve the safety of the organization. And that's the sign of a very generative culture.
Okay. Safety citizenship.
Very long answer.
I haven't heard that before, but safety citizenship, that's really cool definition of that. Could we talk a little bit about maybe how the scheduler fits into here, and the scheduler fits into that cultural piece? Maybe not necessarily the exact processes that schedulers could do, but how they can help keep that culture of a, safety first type of value.
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. So more of these organizations that I go into for their on-site evaluations, we see the same thing. The scheduler is the glue. They're the hub. They're the central to everything. They're kind of the perpetuators of culture, because you have pilots that come in and come and go, mechanics, sometimes in and out technicians. The scheduler is the constant, and they're the ones that are doing the interface. So they see cultures from corporate, they see cultures in the flight department, but the schedulers are key because they can also pick up on things where there's signals in the system that aren't right. So if they start seeing, if they start hearing from maintenance problems or from pilots that there's certain problems in the system, the scheduler is able to take all that in and really seriously contribute to the safety performance through reporting that information or through disclosing that information.
Okay.
So I love thinking of the scheduler as like the glue that holds the whole flight department together.
I agree.
I mean, honestly.
We agree on that as well. Okay, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but so a lot of we talked a bit about this before we started recording, but a lot of flight departments do not have any fatigue management for the scheduler. So do you think we could kind of draw a line between having safety as a cultural part of your business, and if your scheduler does or does not have some fatigue management in place? I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're going to have a culture of safety and your scheduler, who is probably the glue of what keeps everything together and running, if there's no safety mitigations in place for them, are you really running a safety culture in your flight department?
I would say yes. I mean, it depends. So the schedulers that I've seen and I've worked with that are not on duty and rest periods, that don't have those defined, it isn't necessarily an oversight because the lack of safety, but one, the organization when they plan for schedules, they just seem to assume it's like a day job, like 8 to 4, 8 to 5, whatever it may be. A lot of times they don't realize that, okay, there are international trips where they're flight following till the morning. They get up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it may be. And the second side, especially with some of these really good flight departments, the leadership is so good that we talked about safety citizenship, which actually comes from a concept called organizational citizenship. And organizational citizens are those that go above and beyond what's required of them to benefit the organization. So you have these schedulers that absolutely love their organization, and they're like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to get up at 2 a.m. I'm going to do this flight because that's what we need to do to get the mission done. And they don't think twice about it.
Right.
So what I'm getting at is that they're not necessarily don't have rest and duty periods because they're not safe or have a safety culture. A lot of times they're just so dedicated and so into the mission that it doesn't even think about it. So sometimes you have to put these restrictions in to protect themselves from themselves,
Sure.
in a sense. Because you start doing some of these things, I mean, while there are, maybe not to the level of a cockpit crew, but schedulers still are doing some safety sensitive functions. And if they're tired or fatigued, then that can impact the entire system. So, but long answer to your question.
No, I love it. So it really comes down to, it doesn't have to be a written down formal process, but if that is your safety culture, that you're trying to get the mission completed, I would guess then that person too, if they are coming in at 2 a.m., they're able to tell their leadership, listen, I'm not going to be able to work a full day. Maybe I'm not coming in until later. Perhaps we can do some remote work. So very cool.
In most cases, I do see that. Yeah, it's the I've been there from like 9 to 5, and then now I have to follow a flight from like 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. And then generally saying the next day they probably wouldn't have to come in, but most of them would just because they love what they do,
right?
And the organizations are so good. But again, it's more the sense of not to check a box, but to protect themselves from themselves sometimes.
All right,
and protect the system.
Good point. Cool. All right, so now we're going to kind of switch away from the culture and the maybe unwritten pieces, and I switch over to actual decision making, especially decision making while you're under pressure. So how do you think stress and organizational dynamics, maybe some of those leadership choices, affects the decision making in a flight department?
I think in the terms of safety, this is one aspect that I teach is when it comes to safety, tactical decision making, under pressure decision making, sometimes breaks down the margins of safety.
Okay.
So what I mean by that, when we talk in safety, we talk about there's always a balance between production and protection, right? Everybody's familiar with the dilemma, they call it, or paradox of the two Ps. In the long term, in the long view, when the organization has time, when they're breathing, when they're looking down the road, a few months, whatever it may be, years, they're able to really honor that balance, or they try to honor that balance between production and protection. However, as that time horizon gets shorter and where action has to be taken, the organization will sometimes forget about that balance, and they will, again, to that spirit of getting the mission done, they'll lean more towards production and getting the mission done, and then forget to fully honor the protection side of it. That's where I see some of the decision making, some of the culprits of really high ops tempo, under pressure decision making.
Okay.
And I saw that a lot in the organizations I've actually worked at as a pilot.
All right. Do you have an example, like a good example of how that, of one where that did happen?
I don't know how much I can disclose here. Okay, so where I worked as a charter pilot, we were in the Midwest. Always got bad weather in the winter. We had weather minimums. We had requirements, and we always took a conservative, because of the runway length. We always took a conservative approach with contaminated runways, snow, ice, and all that.
Okay.
But down the road from us, we had a major international airport. Okay. And when flights started getting canceled at that major international airport, the people who could afford charter would turn around and call my company at what's 10 miles up the road. And for the case of getting the mission done, getting that income, getting people where they need to be, because the airlines are obviously failing at it, we would sometimes shorten, or we'd reduce those concerns that we would normally have.
Yep.
So whereas it was like a flight that we had like days to plan, and said, oh, we're going to have a major snowfall or snow squall come through, maybe we ought to change times or whatever. that kind of just went out the window
Yeah.
with the so that's maybe not a great example, but that is an example
No.
of the time horizon.
Yep. I think that's, yeah. And then I bet a lot of times it's like, oh, we'll just do this one more time. And then that one more time just ends up, or can end up being two more times and three more times. And then now the planning that you've had in place is really not happening anymore at all.
Yeah, yeah. And if I could expand on that, we just talked about that in really long conversation in class this week about successful deviations.
Okay.
So as like you said, if we say, oh, one more time, we're just going to do it this way. Okay, well, we have this SOP in place, but you know what? We're just going to this one time. We're just going to, we can bypass it. And those SOPs, those things, those requirements, they're risk controls, right?
Yeah.
And if you're constantly sidestepping it successfully, then that starts becoming habit, and people become desensitized to it. So it's what I call successful, or I don't call it that, but successful deviations lead to complacency and obviously blindness to what you're actually doing. You're removing a barrier.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And we see it happen a lot. I mean, I don't know, gosh, I could probably count multiple times where you've come into a flight department like, well, we don't really land on runways less than 5,000 feet long. But if so-and-so really needs to go, there's this piece of paper and we just fill it out. And so really that rule is not there. It's really not a hard and fast rule when probably it should be.
Right. And going back to where the schedule is important, especially with that, when a new airport or new requirements come in that don't meet with the SOPs, obviously the schedule is usually like the buffer between the organization and the flight department. That can sometimes be a hard conversation, but it's up to the schedule to say, okay, this doesn't meet our SOPs. We need to get with the chief pilot, see, or the director of aviation, see if this is doable, and then report back. So again, kind of going back to the importance of the scheduler in this whole mix.
Sure. Yeah, it's one of the first lines of defense to saying to the passenger, possibly this isn't going to work. You need to find a different
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions on maybe strategies to help leaders, crews, and dispatchers to maybe stay more grounded in these high pressure moments, like when these decisions come across the line?
Good suggestions, maybe not. It's one of those that, so SOPs are generally written in calmer times, right? When we can sit there and think about the long time horizon. And like I said, when things get really under pressure, we have a tendency to, we want to make this work. Okay. The SOPs are there for a reason. Okay. So I would say, we need to adhere to those. Despite, maybe it take us a little bit more time, maybe we'll have to switch something out, but we need to adhere to those.
Yeah.
But I do want to say very carefully that safety management and being safety isn't necessarily a wet blanket. Doesn't mean you can't take any risk. So if there are opportunities where you say, okay, we absolutely have to get this mission done after consideration, then we need to do it smartly. And we need to find every single possible way we can mitigate that risk. But this has to be more the exception than the rule. We can't say, oh, he wants to go to a 4,000 foot runway again today. Okay, well, our SP says 5,000. We'll just write a waiver.
Okay.
It's got to be more than that. It's got to be a lot more than that.
Okay.
So when it comes down to that pressure, let's just slow down, think about it from a risk-based perspective, and then SOPs are there for a reason. I just want us to remember that.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. So what if somebody wanted to learn more about this? And we heard just about a moment ago, you mentioned that you were speaking to a group of students. So you're a professor. What are the good training? Where's some good training to go to or to take if a scheduler wanted to learn more about these leadership practices, or maybe how to help their whole organization slow down and adhere to an SOP if possible?
Yeah, that's so I deal a lot with like very safety specific courses like safety management, which does cover safety leadership. NBAA has a good program, a safety manager certificate. They also have good leadership courses as well that talk about flight department leaderships. One thing I might recommend, I know CAM is normally seen for like flight crew, but I think dispatchers would make great CAMs, a certified aviation manager, and that they can learn a lot of principles in there as well in that track.
That's a really good point. And for those listening, then look down in the details. I'll make sure those things are linked into the notes on the bottom. So the safety certificate, which I just got that a couple months ago. It was a great program. And the CAM is also a great program. And I'll pop in some leadership ones in there. Those are, yeah, great ideas. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's kind of switch over to what are you doing these days, specifically Baldwin Aviation. So, there's a couple of companies out there that do some safety management, but Baldwin, that company, has been around for quite a while. Could you maybe tell us more about what the company does and its mission for those who maybe are not familiar with Baldwin?
Well, Baldwin, their flagship product has always been the online safety management platform.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an application that gives safety managers and organizations the tools to effectively run a safety management system. So anything from risk registers to auditing capability, frat too, I suppose. But the it's just a collection of tools that make the safety manager's job easier. And the thing about Baldwin that they've always advertised was that it's configurable or scalable.
Okay.
So every organization is unique. Um, Therefore, the safety management system has to be unique to that organization. Therefore, the tool that supports your safety management system has to be able to scope or scale to what you're doing. So, and then recently, since I've been there, since I was there, I can address that in a second. They've incorporated more safety manager services.
Okay.
So we're there a lot. We always said in the past we are more than a software company. We're a peopleware company too. So we provide expertise, training. We have online training courses. We do like virtual safety manager, ASAP, safety culture survey. So they run the whole gamut of all these supports.
Nice.
My capacity there now is a contract safety manager. So I
Okay.
still like to work with them predominantly with the safety culture stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But I did that to pursue BASC, and I know it's a whole different topic, but I went into time to pursue BASC. So, but
Nice.
still really wonderful company. And they're making good inroads and helping to make these systems safer.
Okay, so that made me think of two things. So one, the ASAP program, which is not real well known to I don't want to say regular, but for most schedulers and dispatchers, the ASAP program is not real well known. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about just maybe high level of what that program is? And it sounds like, so you have training. Baldwin has training on that.
They also provide the facilitator
Oh, they
if
do.
you should need to. So
Okay.
with the ASAP, it's a collaboration between the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) and the organization
Mm-hmm.
to improve the National Airspace System, the NAS, the safety of the NAS.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of dispatchers, they can also they can have their own ASAP program along with pilots and along with technicians and cabin crew. And what it does is that if there are any deviations, regulatory deviations that are committed during a flight, during a mission, whatever, or during the planning episode, you can submit those to your ASAP program.
Mm-hmm.
What would then happen is then it would go to a council, event review council, which you'd have your ASAP manager, you'd have the FAA representative, a scheduler representative, and you would look at it, look what happened. And as long as it wasn't one of those, they call the big five, it's like drugs, criminal, those kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
they accept it. And then if there is corrective action that needs to be taken, that can be all done in-house without any sanction or enforcement from the FAA.
I think it's a cool program, and I wish more
It
people would do
is. It
that.
is.
I
Yeah,
really, I mean, like you said, it's for the masses. It's like to help the whole program, help the whole industry out. So
it
uh,
is. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
that's
And we're seeing more and more prior. I mean, ACS has always been the big staple in that
okay.
in
Yeah.
terms of providing ASAP services.
Hmm.
We're seeing Baldwin get on it. I think Polaris is going to do the same thing as well.
Okay.
So just seeing the importance of this program and basically spreading the gospel, if you will, it's becoming important. And it's a good way for us to get data too.
Yeah, and data helps us make informed decisions. And yeah, I really
Absolutely.
wish more people. I've really only been part of two flight departments that have had a program like that. I've had other people say, "Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to put our information public." But I think it's a really cool two-way street. Okay, so you're giving out your information, and I don't believe that they share any specific details, but you're giving out some information which helps them make better decision, but it also helps you to avoid any penalties if you really perhaps should have gotten a
Yes.
penalty.
Yes. Yeah. In a sense, yes. Yeah. It is kind of a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Kind of, not really, but there'll still be a response for the organization, but there may be training, but I think the elevator pitch is that through this program in the FAA's collaboration, it will make the whole system safer.
Yeah. So cool. I had heard, this has been years ago, that it was sometimes hard to find the facilitator. So that's really cool that that is something that's out there. It's not like you have to
Mhm.
knock on the FSDO's door anymore and, ask them to be the facilitator. You guys can help with that, it sounds like.
Yeah, we
Well,
can help with that. We can help with getting them started with the MOUs. So yeah, we can do that as well.
all right. Excellent. Right. Well, how about we throw in a couple of comments and chat about BASC a little bit, because you have recently taken over BASC, which
I
is a
have.
really cool program. I've been
Incredibly.
familiar with that one for a number of years, and some of our clients use that. Can you tell us what BASC is?
I sure can. So Business Aviation Safety Consortium is, to me, it was a dream to take it over. To be honest with you, I just wanted to work for Rick, but I think he was at a point where he wanted to get more focused on the front line and have somebody else doing the company stuff.
Sure.
But very honored that he thought of me to take it over. But we are the way I describe our organization is that we are a consortium on the path to organizational excellence.
Okay.
And we do this through our basically three pillars. One of them is collaboration. So we do a lot of data sharing at BASC.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll see a practice in one organization, and when I go to another organization, hey, they do it this way. And they're always happy to share. Like one organization had a great SAFA or a RIP check manual.
Mm-hmm.
And I desensitized it and put it out there for any BASCer. I did the same thing with the safety management manual. So we're really eager to share because we're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
The second pillar is the education. And I truly believe that education is key, not only to organizational excellence, but being safe and being better at our craft, whether it be a scheduler, whether it be a technician, whether it be a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
I read many years ago. I think I want to attribute it to Tony Kern. If
Okay.
not, I'll just do it anyway because everybody likes Tony.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
he was talking in the context of aircrew, but we're like the medical field, and you'll always see doctors and nurses. There'll be noses still in the journal to see what the latest findings are, what how they can do things more efficient, more effective. We should be the same in aviation. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we don't just get our pilot's license or dispatching license or whatever and then say, okay, I'm done. No, we need to keep learning. So education is a huge part of what BASC is. We have quarterly education sessions that members have to attend.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be soon starting a series on leadership and how to lead effectively. And then finally, the last pillar is evaluation. So we do evaluate. So every year, our organizations will do an internal evaluation,
Okay.
and they'll pass it to us, and we'll review it, grade it, send it back, and then on the fourth year, we'll actually go on site.
Okay.
And we'll do an in-person. And the way we evaluate isn't, we don't go in there and say, okay, I'm going to judge you against a list of things and tick the boxes. We go in and say, where are your challenges? Let's work together. We'll roll up our sleeves and we'll work through them together.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we want them to have is a very effective safety management system. And we're not going to say, nope, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. We're going to say, we can do this better, and we'll do it together.
I love it.
So that's BASC in a nutshell, so to speak.
That is so cool. And I want to say that that is something that the whole industry needs to do a little bit of changing on. So, and I've been around for a few years, and the amount of, we are definitely sharing more, but it does feel like many flight departments, probably not if you're part of BASC, but many flight departments are very closed in, and they're like, oh, I can't share any of this information with anybody else, which is so silly. Like you're saying, is that we need to have everybody educated on all sorts of things. Why not share some really cool processes from one department over to the other?
hmm
LD Aviation gets a chance to do that, but in the dispatch realm. So
hmm
I love
Good.
that, because we get to go in and we get to see, oh, this flight department is just rocking it in the, I don't know, the SIFL or the catering section. And then we can show that to the other organizations. Anyway, I love it. I love those education sessions.
That's an important aspect. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because when you look at the airlines, talking to some safety practitioners in the airlines, they have safety manager numbers on speed dial for other airlines. So
Right.
you like have the safety manager from United calling, Americans and, hey, are you having this problem with this fleet too? And it's like nothing thought of. It's normal practice. So I don't know why, as you said, we're so guarded sometimes. Maybe because we're dealing with Fortune 500 companies. I don't know, um, but yeah, it is surprising.
Right. Yeah. I am surprised. I still see it sometimes when people are uninterested in sharing their personal experiences. And we can pull out names and company names, etc. So I don't think that should be a hindrance to us anymore.
Mm-mm.
Or maybe I should say is that you could probably Google all sorts of stuff anyway. So what you think you're keeping private might not be that private anyway.
True. So true.
so much,
Very
so
true.
much on the internet. So very cool.
That's right.
Well, what great programs and organizations you are running, leading, and being a part of. I love it. So cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very honored to be part of BASS. That, to me, that is probably the pinnacle of my career, I guess you'd say,
Sure.
of everything I've done. I've loved all the companies I've worked for. They've all been fantastic. But being part of this has been everything I've dreamt about.
No, that's great. And Rick's pretty cool too. I know he's
He's
switched
awesome, man.
roles and stuff, but yeah, he's been pretty motivational also.
He is extremely motivational.
Good. Okay, so let's kind of switch over from those companies and let's talk. This is a couple of words that a lot of us have heard out there, and it's the just culture and accountability. Accountability is a big deal. I want to kind of talk about how we're going to be moving from blame over to maybe more learning. So let's start out with, what does just culture mean, like in practice for a flight department?
It's a broad term, I guess you'd
Yeah,
say.
true.
But
Yeah.
what the one thing that I always caution about, or when I teach, is this idea of justness is a trait of overall culture. So it's not, we're going to develop a just culture outside of the realm of all other cultures, whether it be safety culture, production culture, teamwork culture, whatever it may be.
Okay.
So justness is a trait of that, and what shared values and beliefs are regarding being just. And so, in terms of this facilitating a just culture, it is important. Again, it starts with leadership. But one of the things also is we have to realize that a just culture is not a no blame culture. So,
Okay.
and some people bristle at that, but discipline and punishment is absolutely part of just culture.
Okay.
It is, because in order to be just, there has to be times where you say you're crossing the line. We don't want this from our employees. It's bad for organizations, so we need to do something.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and by doing that, you're being just to the other employees who are towing the line, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So there has to be that element. But I mean, the statements are nice, as long as they're, criminal, negligent, whatever. We'll accept your report. That's just kind of a window wash of what a just culture is. It really needs to be practiced in and day out. So
Makes sense.
one of the things I recommend, maybe I'm going too far and deep in here, but there are algorithms to determine culpability and what the
Okay.
organizational response will be. So if I submit a report, I know how it will be handled. And that's why an ASAP program is so wonderful. I will know how it will be handled, and I know what the outcome will be depending on how it's handled. I know it just won't be submitted to somebody who that day could be in a very bad mood and not like what I did and fire me.
Sure.
So that's part of that justice, is having that procedural justice as well. So I don't know if I strayed off on that one, but
No, I actually really love it, and it kind of comes back to, I will take my organization a little bit, because it doesn't have to be just in a flight department. Well, we're aviation, but not technically a flight department. I think that just culture um, is important, probably in any organization. Just the idea of when do I get in trouble? When do I not get in trouble? And balance that with, okay, I'm going to go ahead and report things that I see or have done, so that environment of trust to be able to report those things. I guess just culture in general is just it's important, and having all those processes documented. I guess that's where I'm kind of at my company right now, is that we need to start documenting that, and so everybody knows where they are at.
You do. And going to the second part of your question, so laying the foundation for that justness, and then creating a space for people, they know that they can have voice, they can speak freely
Mm-hmm.
and report, then that then leads to the things we can learn that we otherwise wouldn't be able to learn. So, and the we can't be dispositional to the person. We have to understand that there are things. It is very possible most of the time that when a person makes a mistake, error, deviation is sometimes a symptom rather than a cause. It's a symptom of the system.
Sure.
So without that information, we would never know. We
Mm-hmm.
would never know. So we have to create that space through practicing just practices.
Mm-hmm.
For practice twice, but that's what it kind of comes down to.
Nope. Very good point. Okay, so let's kind of switch a tiny bit. What are the dangers of a punitive culture? What if you didn't have the safety culture, or I'm sorry, just culture type of process, and you were very punitive about that? What dangers are in that type of a culture?
Nobody would report.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody would. You wouldn't. It'd be like trying to fly an airplane blind without windows, without instruments. I mean, you wouldn't know what your system's doing because nobody would give a rip,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody would report to you because they don't want to get in trouble. And we saw a hit to that with Redonda Vaught, the nurse at Vanderbilt. I forget the time that was, but for the patient death, she reported that she did it wrong. Ended up being charged, got probation, but the nurses, that really impacted the patient safety reporting as a result, because that was they consider that punitive. And we have a really good discussion about this in class too. But even in your culture, if you have any moment where you become punitive in a report, it's going to kill your reporting program. So if you do have a punitive culture, nobody's gonna report. They're not going to want to stick their neck out.
And I think that's interesting that you say, so maybe that was punitive towards that one nurse, but it sounds like it spread through the entire department, all of the nurses. And so then nobody was going to report, even after
Oh,
just.
industry wide, this was, I mean, huge. I mean, the nurses all around the industry, they followed this case, they railed it for trial, and yeah, they're like, no, it's not good.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up. But I think the point is
Hmm.
that you're making is that you have to be really careful with that punitive because it can lead to obviously something huge.
Absolutely. And so we go back to the point that if somebody does need to be punished or disciplined,
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's good if there are guidelines to when this will happen, to show that that person has crossed over that line.
Yep.
And you always say that, well, as long as it wasn't willful, criminal, negligent, whatever. Well, what does that mean? And who decides that? And that's
Yep.
kind of what I was getting at.
Yep. Good points. Very good points. Have you seen cultures who might have come from a punitive side and be able to, or companies be able to change their culture from punitive over to just?
Yeah, I think I've seen it both ways actually. But it really kind of depends on leadership. It's the leader that you get in there. Leadership sets the tone for the organization.
Yep.
And if you are under the leader that punishes, shoots first, asks questions later,
Yep.
then that's what you're going to have as a culture.
Okay.
That's what it's going to be. And that's going to spread from the leadership. Likewise, if you have a very punitive culture, but you get a leader in who fully understands the benefit of reporting, of understanding that humans are fallible, then slowly it takes time to build trust on that. But slowly you'll start seeing that people understand that they feel safe to
Okay.
report.
So you
Yeah.
change it. All right. Cool. All right, so let's kind of look maybe then more towards the future here of safety, etc. So, what do you see
Hmm.
as maybe the biggest emerging challenges for aviation around safety these days?
Around safety?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Specifically to fixed wing, I think some of the automation that's coming about.
Okay.
I think one thing that concerns me is I think the lack of knowing their craft, lack of knowing how to fly. I don't know another way to put it. I even saw it in the simulator. Like, well, let the autopilot do that. Well, okay, what if I didn't have an autopilot? And I know I'm being like a doomsdayer here, but we seem to have lost the craft of flying, and now we're getting systems monitors in the cockpit. Which, if that's the direction that the industry wants to go, that's great. But I just that concerns me because you know, especially when you have that many layers of automation,
Mm-hmm.
it can mask things sometimes. And
Okay.
I don't know, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but
It's all right.
that does concern me. I think the UAS, obviously, introduction into the system outside of flying, that concerns me a little bit.
Yep.
The use of the AI in risk and risk mitigation and risk-based decision making concerns me a little bit because AI, I don't think can replace human judgment.
Sure. Yep.
But so there are just a few of the high-level topics that I think concern me, and then another one too is kind of off in left field is security around your passengers and your specifically your crew around the world today. I mean, it's that's getting really concerning.
You know what? I think you've hit on 4 different additional podcasts that we could do on each one of those
Yeah,
things because
right.
yes, I can see where you could have issues. We could be moving in the direction of some big issues in each one of those sections. Yep.
Hmm.
Very,
Yeah,
very good to point out. Um, all right, this one is again, this is kind of another question, but it kind of affects some of my clients, our specific niche. How can smaller operators without those big budgets still build that strong safety culture?
that is so. What I love about smaller organizations is that they're more agile. So the culture, because you don't have as many people to have shared values with, right? So maybe two, three, four, five people, whatever. So it's easier to inspire and influence, at least to me, a smaller group like that. But it's all the same. Your leadership has to be present. So your leaders have to set this tone, set these shared values. This is what we want to do. We want to know what's going on. We want everybody to go home at night. And the only way we're going to do that is if we have the information we need. And so we need that, and we're going to support a culture that is just. We're going to encourage, but at the same time, we do have lines in the sand that we're gonna draw. And then by that, I think with smaller organizations, it is easier for them to develop these stronger cultures. And I see it a lot in these flight departments I go to in BASC. I mean, they're small organizations, they have a very strong culture. And usually it's because they're behind a very strong leader.
Okay.
And the leader setting the tone for the organization. There have been some, seeing leadership's been a little bit weak, and you can see it in the culture. There's a little bit of wavering in there, but a good, strong leader. Not necessarily. I'm not talking about an authoritarian or one that brings a hammer down, but somebody who has really good influencing skills, who leads from the heart,
Yeah.
does really well. So in terms of budget, I mean that's free if
Sure,
you're the
yeah.
right person.
Uh-huh.
But as far as developing the tools to support that safety culture in terms of like safety management, information flow. I know, I mean, working with Baldwin, probably hate me for saying this, but you can do this with any tool that you have in your flight department, Excel spreadsheet, whatever.
Sure.
So it's not the tool that makes the SMS, it's the people.
Point take. Yep. Good point. And I think, what we were talking about before, if we can ask other people in the industry, hey, how are you doing this? They might even share a tool with you.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah, we
perhaps
get that a
they're
lot.
like, hey, Baldwin is the best out there and we love it. And, you've got to get this. It could go both ways.
It can. It absolutely can.
Okay. So another thing that kind of popped into my head was, so we talk about the leadership, right? And not everybody was trained in terms of how important safety is, right? If I'm not mistaken, most flight schools before, and I think maybe it's changing now, but do not have any sort of SMS or safety training as part of their curriculum. And I guess I would say the smaller, maybe a smaller schools. I'm sure Embry-Riddle does, but I feel like if we could get the young pilots who are learning to fly to also recognize that safety is a huge piece of what they're going to be doing for the rest of their life, it might help create more leaders that are going to create this safety culture.
I agree. And I think that's one of the driving factors of why Baldwin has gifted Red Tail Flight Academy
Ah,
with the safety management platform, so they can start introducing this concept to the students at a young age, because they're gonna, I mean, no matter where they go, they're gonna face SMS. I mean, it's gonna be there.
yep.
And I think too that the flight schools, to some extent, doing a good job with the new generation. There's a different line of thinking than when I was coming up through the ranks and flying.
Right.
So flight schools are really big into that more risk-based approach thinking, rather than we're just going to go out and fly, get the mission done. as long as we have one wing and one engine, we're okay. I mean, no, that's not how we fly anymore.
Right.
So, but yeah, so the them being taught at a young level about this idea of safety management is very important. It's very, very important in the industry because it will be there and it'll help to grow in knowledge as well.
Yep, I totally agree. I'm really excited. I'd love to hear that Baldwin gifted that to them. I really hope that
That's very cool.
more flight departments at the ground level, the private students coming in there, starting to get engaged with that right away. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, very important.
So Jason, let's see, what is the single most important idea you'd like your listeners to remember from our talk today?
The single most important idea, I don't know, you can tell I get kind of lather around the mouth talking about all this stuff, so I don't know which one's the most important. I think if I were to think about it, I'll probably, think, oh, I should have said that instead. But the person, we always, sometimes when we're in the mission, we're in dealing with regulations, dealing with checking boxes, dealing with, running checklists, whatever, we forget the person. We forget us, the human, and that we're center to all this. So whenever it is we try to implement things like fatigue risk management, safety management systems, whatever it may be, we have to remember that we're dealing with people. And I know that seems so trivial, but I feel like sometimes we forget that and we just kind of ram an agenda through, we ram safety management through because it's required, but we forget the fact that we're people and we have different views, we have different perceptions, we have different feelings, and we just have to honor those and, do what we can, obviously, to reduce the risk in operations to bring everybody home at night. Other than that, I could probably come up with a lot of things that I think they should know, but anyway, I'll leave it at that.
I love it. People, very important in any organization. Without them, it won't run.
Well, so true.
Okay. How about what if somebody wanted to reach out to you, ask you some more questions, perhaps learn more about BASC or Baldwin or your teaching, the classes that you teach? Where would they do that?
Oh, they can. So BASC has a website.
Okay.
It's BA-safety-consortium.org.
Okay.
Is the BASC website. My email there is jason@BA-safety-consortium.org. It's a long one.
All
I know
right.
I couldn't do really anything about that. Also still have the Portside email address as well, jason@portside.co.
Okay.
And I'm sure I have several other different email addresses that it seems I've collected over the last few months of the different things I do, but those are probably the two best ones.
All right, perfect. And for those listening, I'll make sure that those are linked down below too if you want to reach out. I'll have one more question here before I wrap up. Any projects or initiatives you'd like to highlight that are coming down the road?
Oh, there's so many. But yeah, one in the vein of leadership, we're gonna start a leadership series for our BASC members
I love
that they can attend, or get some really influential speakers into. BASC is participating more in the mental health, mental well-being realm as well, because the importance of that. And we're also getting more involved with UAS. So yeah, we got a couple irons in the fire.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see all that because that sounds super exciting. Jason, thank you so much for coming today. This has really been helpful. Our wealth of knowledge all about
well, thank you for having me.
Safety and everything. And I love that BASC. I really can't wait to see those new leadership classes. So I'll be keeping an eye on that.
Well, we look forward to having you there. So
great.
We'll certainly have you there. But yeah, no, it's been an honor. Thank you for having me and talking to me.
Great. Well, cool. All right. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of the LD Aviation Podcast. Super huge thanks again to Dr. Jason Starke for sharing his insights and proving once again that safety is less about clipboards and more about people. Just like he mentioned at the end, it really is about people. It may be a little bit about caffeine management, possibly as well, for those schedulers who might be on their fourth or fifth cup at this point. So if you'd like to connect with Jason or learn more about Baldwin or BASC or Portside, please check out the links below in the show notes. And then, as always, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please go ahead and hit the follow button. Share it with a fellow dispatcher, scheduler, or aviation nerd who could use a fresh perspective. Until next time, keep flying safe, keep leading with purpose, and remember, the best kind of turbulence is the kind we talk about on podcasts, not in the air. I'm so glad you joined us for this episode of the LD Aviation Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, share, and follow. Your support helps us keep the conversation going and grow our amazing community.